All right, good evening. Hello to friends from before and new friends that are here for the first time. My name is Roberto Ordeñana, and I'm so proud to be the executive director here at the GLBT Historical Society. And I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I really want to thank all of the members of the society that allow us to put on these incredible events and programs. You know, I think at a time when our community continues to face incredible challenges, direct attacks against the most historically marginalized among us, including trans and gender non-binary, people and immigrants in particular. You know, the ability to be able to have critical conversations like the one we're gonna have tonight, the ability to have exhibit space and to share and uplift our stories just has never been more important. And we really could not do that without all of you, and we really could not do that without our incredible partners. And I want to thank Shawn and Suzanne and Laura and Elizabeth for joining us this evening and giving us of your time for what will be a very important conversation. It is a labor of love here at the GLBT Historical Society. Please let us know if you want to get further involved. We've got great volunteer opportunities to help us greet folks here at the museum and also at our archives. And I really want to thank our team who works so hard day in and day out to make these events possible. And I want to introduce Lee Pfeffer, our Senior Manager of Museum Experience, to share a couple of words and to bring us into the evening. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Roberto. Hi, folks. Like Roberto said, my name is Lee. I am the Senior Manager of Museum Experience here. And I love to start out our programs just by looking around the room and asking who has been to the museum before? Wonderful. Yay, a lot of wonderful faces. Is there anybody for whom this is your first visit to our space? Welcome. Wonderful. So happy to have you here. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So this is a program that is part of a recurring speakers series that we have that we do with Shawn here with Unspeakable Vice called Speaking Of. And it's a kind of roundtable panel discussions that we do every couple of months that are based around topics that are in everybody's minds and conversations around San Francisco about San Francisco today and now and what many people remember. So we have our rotating different topics. Tonight's topic is going to be selling the rainbow when the market adopts and drops a movement. So talking about rainbow capitalism and the trajectory of our community and the market, as well as things like public perception around HIV and AIDS and the proliferation and then the dearth and then proliferation of funding, et cetera. We'll get into a lot of that with Shawn as our moderator, but I just wanted to start the evening by welcoming everyone here. I would love to introduce our speakers, and I also want to preface the evening by letting you all know that on your seats we have these little sheets with a little QR code. Feel free to take these home with you. If you don't want to take them home, you can just scan the QR code and leave these up at the front for us. We can reuse them. But this will take you to our feedback survey. If you are willing to fill this out, it should only take you a couple of minutes. It's very short, but any information that you're able to provide really helps us inform our current and future programming, as well as really helps us with reporting that we do for our various grants that help make these programs possible. I also just wanted to apologize and let you all know that we had another speaker who was going to be joining us tonight, Joe Hawkins, who's the CEO of the Oakland LGBTQ Community Center and co-chair of Oakland Pride. Unfortunately, he let us know earlier today that he was not able to make it due to an emergency, so we hope that we will get an opportunity to collaborate again with him soon. I will introduce our wonderful panel and then hand it over to Shawn. Firstly, I would love to introduce our moderator, Shawn. So Shawn Sprockett is an adjunct professor at the California College of the Arts in the Graduate Interaction Design program, where he teaches visual design and creative thinking. He started developing Unspeakable Vice, a volunteer-based queer history walking tour project in 2018, and the project explores lesser-known stories of LGBTQ San Francisco, particularly the influence of people of color and women in the development of queer culture and activism. And next to him we have Suzanne Ford, the executive director of SF Pride. Suzanne is the first trans woman to hold the office, and she is a fierce activist working towards equal rights for the trans community. She's a founding member of the SF Pride Golf Tournament, the first and only PGA-endorsed event ensuring queer visibility in one of the most cis-heteronormative spaces in the world, as well as SF Pride's most lucrative board-led annual fundraiser to date. Suzanne has also served as the president of the board of the Spar Center in Marin County and as a board member, vice president, and treasurer of SF Pride. Originally from Kentucky, she graduated with honors in a BA in history, from Murray State University. She then attended Howard Law School. She was employed as a regional sales manager at Revere Packaging for over 11 years and was named by Plastic News as one of the women breaking the mold in the packaging industry in 2017. The Trans Day of Visibility Committee of San Francisco recognized her with a Legacy Award in 2022. Suzanne was chosen as for the prestigious Honors Foundation Leadership Award in 2024 and recently moved to the iconic Castro neighborhood and is available to speak for groups or employers about trans issues and her experience facing the world as a trans woman. Woo. Sitting next to Suzanne is Laura Thomas. Laura is a queer femme living in the Mission with her 3 cats. She works as the Senior Director of HIV and Harm Reduction Policy for the SF AIDS Foundation, where she leads state and local policy advocacy. She's been advocating on HIV and public health issues for over 30 years since becoming involved in AIDS activism through ACT UP in San Francisco. She's served in the public health seat on the San Francisco Entertainment Commission since 2016. She previously worked at the Drug Policy Alliance, community-based organizations in San Francisco, and the San Francisco Department of Public Health. She's a former 2-term co-president of the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club and was a founding member of the SF Dyke March. She's proud to sit on the GLBT Historical Society Board of Directors, and she graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a master's in public health and a master's in public policy. Double masters. Woo. And last but certainly not least, we have Elizabeth, is Hudy or Hudy? Hudy, that's what I thought. So Elizabeth Hudy is a queer leftist artist and business owner creating playfully enraged propaganda rooted in community building, radical empathy, and maximalism. Since starting the Peach Fuzz in 2017, she has raised over $300,000 for mutual aid and nonprofits and provided dozens of free resources for fellow small business owners. In early 2023, Elizabeth was brought on to be a featured artist for the 2024 Target Pride collection after the right-wing tizzy over their 2023 collection. Target abandoned those artists and massively scaled back on all future Pride collaborations, demonstrating just how shallow corporate support for the LGBTQ community can be. So we actually have also, if you are interested, we actually have one of Elizabeth's shirts up in the gift shop that the Peach Fuzz wonderfully and very generously donated to our organization a couple of years ago following that Pride fallout. So if you want to check that out, we have that up front. So I will pass it over. I will pass things over to Shawn, and we'll do a facilitated conversation, and then near the end of the night, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. We'll bring out a microphone so that you can be included on the recording, and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Lee. And thanks for putting all of this together. This is a lot of hard work, so appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to begin this conversation. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. These are really great people to be able to speak to about this topic. As Lee mentioned, I do a walking tour project. People at the end of those tours are always asking me questions, usually about how something has changed or what is going on with this topic today. And what perfect better forum than to bring people in who are part of the community who know more about this topic than I certainly do, who can weigh in and discuss this in a kind of round table. And so tonight's topic I'm really excited to get into, because this definitely comes up one of the most at the end of the tours as people talk about Pride and what's going on with it and other expressions of different kinds of corporate allyship that are happening across multiple different efforts in our community. So I am a teacher, so I can't help but give you just a tiny history lesson, just 3 seconds. But just to kind of catch everyone up to speed a little bit on kind of the quick history, very abbreviated history of Pride. And I focus on Pride just because it's maybe one of the most visible examples of this corporate allyship and sometimes where we see it. But Pride's history has always been a contentious one, right? Even the very first example of people walking down Polk Street was fiercely debated amongst activists and who it represented and what issues were going to be discussed. Counter-Pride movements were right in the beginning of all of this as well. And so there's always been a really lively discussion about visibility and about who gets to be visible and what that means in the community. And of course, corporate allyship, as that began to happen into the history, became a subject of debate as well. So 3 basic periods. Again, I'm drastically oversimplifying a lot of information here, but if we think of the 70s and 80s as kind of the initial momentum in the protest era, 90s and 2000s, we start to get into some marketing. We start to see more companies become interested in marketing to gay households, which is interesting. And then, of course, the most recent history, we see this retreat, especially with the current administration's pressure to make corporations abandon their DEI efforts. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of defunding of a lot of these pride efforts. The stat I really thought was pretty shocking here is I was familiar with, of course, San Francisco's loss of sponsorship, but rural Pride being down 70 to 90% is pretty shocking. So as we jump into this conversation today, I just had these 2 nice juxtaposing images as we think about what corporate allyship means in this context and how certain demonstrations, oh, is there a better one?
We're going to try.
I'm just that loud. When you think about the word corporate allyship, what image or moment comes to mind? And is it a positive one or a negative one? And then you can pass the mic for whoever.
I mean, so I work in the world of HIV/AIDS, which is not the same thing as LGBTQ Pride, but there's a lot of overlap, and really the sort of dominant form of corporate allyship, if you want to call it that in the HIV world, is pharmaceutical companies, right? So we are the market for them. They know that, and they also, many pharmaceutical companies contribute a substantial amount of money from a nonprofit perspective, not from their perspective, but from our perspective, as well as broader LGBTQ initiatives, right? But it's a very double-edged sword. And so, you know, as much as like I have friends who have gone to work for Gilead and things like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are more in reality than a market to them. And you know, we've seen that in pharmaceutical companies when their medication is no longer sort of the leading, has the leading market share, they are likely to step away from it and stop funding HIV organizations. And I think it also has a chilling effect on, you know, the extent to which organizations will do the advocacy work around the cost of pharmaceuticals, right? Like the cost of HIV medications, by and large, individuals generally aren't spending their money on HIV medications, but as taxpayers, we are spending billions of dollars on medications that is all sort of, direct transfer to pharmaceutical companies. So they are not doing it out of some sort of sense of altruism. It's really about their bottom line. So that's sort of what I think about corporate allyship, is that it's really ultimately about their bottom line, and only sort of intermittently about some sort of allyship.
I think my favorite moment in 2022, we had just decided we were going to have our first in-person event after the pandemic. I had the job for maybe 4 weeks, and we were standing up for people to the police and talking about uniformed police officers in the event. We asked the Pride Alliance if they would not be in full uniform, and touched off a firestorm with Mayor Breed. That was my opening relationship with her. We did find a compromise, and when we announced the compromise the day of the flag raising, I left there and I got a phone call from Kaiser Permanente, and they informed us that they were in and they were going to provide $200,000. And at the time, we had $100,000 committed to us. Things looked pretty bleak. Most people would have run. But I remember they said, listen, Suzanne, we, like you, have to hold a lot of different constituencies. We definitely at Kaiser Permanente, and Shyama, a black woman, a public policy person there, said, we definitely hear you and we want to stand up for black and brown trans people. But we also have a relationship with first responders. And we wanted you all to find a solution, and we want to support that kind of back and forth, that kind of conversation in our community that finds solutions that work for more than one side. And they have been the number one supporter of SF Pride. This will be their 5th year, and they will be again this year. And I remember that phone call, never forget it. Just like I didn't feel alone. And that's weird coming from a corporation, because I many years ago was very anti-corporations, but I could tell you, and then I would to take it a step further. Hyatt, they have a big party at the Hyatt. Kaiser Permanente does for all their queer employees. They're going to march in the parade, and I'm a Kaiser Permanente member, and I had my facial surgery at Kaiser Permanente, and they invite me to speak every year. And when I walk into that room, you can just tell that there is so much joy. They are so happy that the employees at Kaiser Permanente are so joyful to be in the parade and to be part of our community. And that, to me, is allyship. It goes several different ways.
I would say that my first interaction on like a personal level was being asked by a publicly traded company to give them free stuff for goodie bags for their employees. I responded with what has now become like my form response of like, love that you're trying to treat your employees to little goodie bags, but I'm not going to help you set the precedent for asking your queer community for free shit, because it doesn't feel good, and I know what you guys are trading at, like you have the money. And they were like, oh, no, we would never want to just take things from you. We can pay you. I'm like, but you didn't lead with that. And if I had less, cojones to be like, no, they would have happily taken free stuff from me. So that kind of first introduction was like, all right, I need to set the tone when dealing with these people. It's not just an honor to be included. Like, you have to treat me like somebody that you want to work with, not that you want to take things from for a photo op. So that was my first. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've already started to pick a little bit about how, organizations like these are sometimes made up, of course, of lots of people, lots of individuals inside of it. Who inside these organizations was actually fighting to get their companies to contribute to your respective organizations that you are associated with? And does that person's sincerity change anything when you're engaging with someone who's representing a company?
In most cases, I deal with the head of an employee resource group at many of the companies. In some instances, I might be dealing with the public policy director, like at Kaiser Permanente. But for the most part, I'm usually dealing with queer people. And a lot of times, I've had a lot of bad conversations where a queer person had to come and tell me terrible news that they had changed their mind and they weren't supporting us or whatever. But in most cases, it's the employee resource group heads. And then in some cases, especially in beverage companies, I will be dealing with the marketing people. We have a budget for this, and a lot of times in the beverage industry, and those are probably my least favorite sponsorships. But I will say, it's usually we're dealing with our siblings. I'm not dealing with Mr. Target or,
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, right? Like, particularly like pharmaceutical companies like Gilead that very intentionally hire from the community. They can pay a lot more than nonprofits do. One of the single best policy and advocacy people in the state of California just left his nonprofit advocacy job to go work for Gilead. And, and I saw the job listing, so I know he's making a lot more than he was, and I'm happy for him for that. And at the same time, they're hiring talent away from community and away from nonprofits. So it's, and at the same time, working for nonprofits and nonprofit wages is, ultimately you get pretty burnt out doing the work. I mean, you can get burnt out no matter how much money you're making. But I think it's easier sometimes when you've got community folks that and that you've built up a relationship with to be able to have the conversations. And often they can give you, better sort of inside intel of, ask for the money for this, not for this, and you're more likely to get it. Or what if you say, this, or they want to hear that you're going to do this with it. And that's useful. It's helpful. It feels like they're being allies in terms of helping us raise more money that's going to the community. But it's, I think you get into these dialogues about selling out and what selling out means, right? And that's both it's a very negative thing, but, have I sold out because I'm taking a salary from a nonprofit organization? You can argue that all the way down. So it's helpful to have people on the inside always, but that doesn't necessarily, that doesn't undo capitalism.
Yeah, when I, was working with Target, every single person that I worked with that worked at Target was a queer person. So when the rug got pulled out from that, and they decided, the higher-ups decided, no, we're not going to stand up for the queer artists who we've already put out their stuff and are now getting a torrent of hate messages and are getting featured on Fox News and all this stuff. And they were like, well, we're not gonna touch that anymore. I know that all the employees there really felt like hung out to dry also, which made it extra hard because they didn't want to have to give me the bad news. And yeah, it was extra heartbreaking, I think, to know that it wasn't just my work that was getting stripped. It was a whole entire department that was, being shafted by the new like marketing person who was also like a drag queen, which was weird. Like everybody involved was queer, so I was like, okay, who was making this decision then? Yeah, that was my.
I want to ask some questions to some of you individually. And the first one is for Suzanne. The research I did found that SF Pride runs on about $3.2 million a year. Is that the right number or? Four.
Yeah.
Even higher. And a significant portion of that has historically come from corporate sponsors, several of whom have now walked away. Can you help the audience understand what that money actually pays for and what the event looks like without it?
Okay. Yeah, about a $4 million budget. About $1 million to run the organization for the whole year, to do the planning, for the staff, for the rent, to keep the lights on. About $3 million for the 2 days. Insurance, security, medical services just for the 2 days is over $1 million. If in the corporate right now, and it's really a complex story about last year. We were up in the press. We did lose some sponsors. It did look bleak in March. We did go live with it and called people in. Some of those sponsors came back. Anheuser-Busch did not, thank God. I hope they never come back. But this year we're at, right now, $1,930,000 in corporate sponsorship. Our goal was 2.1 million. So about half of our budget is provided by corporate. But then the fourth million comes from all of the event, the beverage sales, the parade contingents, the vendor booths, tickets to different events. I think the number one thing in there to remember is San Francisco Pride is free. We are the last major pride that is free of our size. And we're free in one of the most expensive places in the world. So without corporate funding, you're looking at a parade, and that's it. And that has, our board has looked at that. It could happen. It's not going to happen this year. But we could decide that the 2-day event, talent now is astronomical because, people used to tour to sell records. So their fee was low because they were going to sell records off the tour. People now release music so that they can make money touring. And when you're a free event, I can't increase ticket sales. I'm not like Midway where you pay a performer $350,000 and you sell $200 tickets. That's it. The model, it makes what we're doing very difficult.
Thank you. This next one's for Laura. You co-founded the SF Dyke March in the early 90s. At a moment when many in the community felt that Pride had already started moving away from its political roots, what were you responding to, and what did you want the Dyke March to be about?
Yeah, so I was, the 1993 March on Washington, it turned out there were two separate groups of women around the country who were both sort of thinking, we need to do something at the March on Washington that is particularly focused on queer women. So one of those groups was the Lesbian Avengers out of New York City. The other was the ACT UP women's caucuses around the country, which is what I was a part of. And we had experience putting together national events, sort of convenings, protests, actions through ACT UP, and so we started using our network of women around the country to put something together. Decided to do it the night before the March on Washington, and largely it was a feeling that that pride parades, at the March on Washington, that things were just very focused on gay men, and we wanted to not take away from that, but to add some space for queer women in our celebrations and our protests, like in all of it. And so creating that space for what became known as the Dyke March, and it was a huge amount of work, but we decided that it had gone so well in DC that we would bring it back to San Francisco, and it became an event the Saturday night before the Pride Parade. And, certainly at the beginning, it was very much just a march. We started here in the Castro. We walked around the neighborhood, and it was kind of here is space and visibility for queer women in a neighborhood that is not always the friendliest or the most welcoming to queer women. And so that was a lot of what it was about, was just sort of Dyke visibility, Dyke joy, Dyke community, in the midst of all of this. And then part of what happened as the event got larger and larger, the expenses went up and up. And I think that is the history, whether it is Pride, the Dyke March, the Trans March, right? Like, once you start getting bigger and bigger and you start getting more and more people, you have to build out the infrastructure. You need a larger sound system. You need to start providing porta potties. You need to start, you have to get liability insurance on the truck that the DJs are performing on, right? And once you start getting into those spaces, you need money to do that. And so you need to figure out how you're going to raise that money. And so the Dyke March for years operated on, passing buckets and selling T-shirts. We eventually, and my comrade Ingrid is here, started getting local businesses to sponsor the porta potties. That was our big innovation, was sponsoring the porta potties. But you inevitably get to that point, and folks who run the Dyke March now can talk even more about sort of what it costs to do it now and what kind of sort of how that money gets raised. But I think that's you can stay with something that's very grassroots and it's just, a group of people walking in the streets, or you can figure out how to raise the money and reach more people and get your message farther. And those are kind of the trade-offs around what are we doing? And once you start looking for more money, you're ending up with, where is the capital? And if you can't, you can only sell so many T-shirts.
Laura, since you have the mic, do you want to talk about the photos you brought with you?
So when I was asked to do this, I immediately thought of this. So these photos are from Ingrid, who's sitting in the back row there. So in 1993, a group of us learned a lesson the hard way. So it was a lot easier back then to do a sort of guerrilla or rogue group where you just sort of busted into the parade and you didn't, sorry Suzanne, pay for anything. I won't do it now, I promise. And so this was a group of sort of, mostly we were involved in ACT UP San Francisco, but this was in '93 and there wasn't an ACT UP contingent, and we decided to do our own thing. And so we were sort of animated, we were concerned about the extent to which we felt like money and corporate money was taking over Pride and really changing our community events and sort of how things operated. And so we decided we were going to have a rogue contingent, and we were going to make a point about the role of money in corporate Pride. And the lesson that we learned was that irony doesn't work in Pride or in the parade. We confused a lot of people. Apologies to anyone who was in the audience of the '93 Pride. I will say, one of the people in these pictures is Gerard Koskovich, who's one of the founding members of the GLBT Historical Society. But yeah, we were like, we're a market, not a movement, ironically, meaning the opposite, of course. And we had, freedom rings were really big then, and so we wrote freedom rings on a big pink cash register. Yeah. So, the lesson we learned the hard way was we just confused a lot of people, and irony doesn't work. And the parades are very earnest. Contingents in the Pride Parade are very earnest, and they did not understand this. But this, what I really want to say here is that in 1993 we were having this conversation. As Shawn said, this has been part of the conversation from the very beginning. And the point that we were trying to make was, we were concerned that corporations were essentially sort of buying the queer community and the gay community, and we were trying to push back on that and say, look, we can, how do we continue as a movement that is not primarily seen as a market?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, please.
And I love that you did that, and I would support you doing that now. I think, and we heard this in 2022, the same argument, but we in 2023, and we don't talk about it enough, but in the first third of the San Francisco Pride Parade, there are 5 corporations. Yeah, only 5. Open House, LGBT Center, SFA's Foundation, all those nonprofits are in the first third, and only 5 corporations. And we did that so that we would say, listen, we are centering our nonprofits, our queer nonprofits. But it gets lost in the shuffle. You never hear that in the explanation, and too many times, just like now grabbing the mic, I want to explain so badly, but hopefully people are seeing when it's coming down the front. It's not, the days of Facebook buying the parade are over. Facebook gives us 0. Google gives us 0. Apple and Amazon are way in the back with the $45,000 people. And it's not the same villains you think anymore. They're not bankrolling Pride anymore.
Elizabeth, this one's for you. I want to hear more about this story with Target and what exactly happened. Can you walk us through what the whole experience, if people aren't familiar, and maybe what your takeaways were from that total experience on reflection now?
Yeah, so they approached me, I think in 2023 in like January, and the offer was immaculate. It was, we're going to give you basically the Disney rate of royalty on everything that you sell. You're going to have your name, bio, and picture printed on the tag that is on everything that sells, and on their website, they would link to my website, not even to like my page on the Target website, but it would link you to the Peach Fuzz page. And they said, go hog wild with the stuff that you make. We don't want to see generic love is love stuff that really is like, oh, a straight person made this, I think. They wanted me to be silly and joyful, and like encouraged me to make, like, one of the designs was like the undecisive bisexual, like just silly funny things like that, and then a few months into it, and I kept asking them, I'm like, this is really happening, right? Like, you're not going to pull the rug out from underneath me. Like, we're moving forwards on this. I think I made 25 plus items. There was going to be home goods and, dog collars for dogs. And I had to clarify. I mean, yeah, you could use it for whatever you want. But then the 2023 collection launched, so that was like the previous class, I would say, because they start this process out a full 18 months ahead of launch. And that was when the whole, right-wingers saying, oh, they're selling tucking panties to toddlers and all of this made-up bullshit. And, Fox News was reporting that they were having bomb threats at stores. And I was talking to the people at Target corporate, and they were like, none of that actually happened. Like, there was one store where they had an issue of like some guy filming himself being like, this is disgusting. But like, it was not a widespread issue. It was just blown totally out of proportion. And Target immediately was like, we're cutting it. We're not doing this anymore. They very quickly stripped it from, 25 plus items to 5. They said, if you want your stuff put in Target, it's not going to have your name on it anymore. One of my designs was a mug that said, support all your sisters, not just your sisters, like CIS. And they changed it to say, support all your sisters. That's it. Which, what that has to do with pride, I could not tell you. But they had already made all of the clothing items. So the whole time I was like, this doesn't even make good business sense, because they still had to pay me out for the stuff that they made. They made over 50,000 units of the clothing. That's how I had so many t-shirts to donate here and stuff. And they were just going to trash all the rest of it. And, the whole Target boycott kind of led out of that. So it was just such a surreal and bizarre thing to have happen, because it didn't make any business sense, even from that angle. And I remember I went to a Target store the day that it was supposed to launch and asked, like, oh, where's your Pride section? First store, they're like, we don't know. I don't even think we have one. So I went to a different store, and they were like, oh, it's like shoved in the back of the maternity section or something like that. I found my few items, I purchased them, and I went out to my car, and I just sobbed. Like, it finally had hit me. As personally a bisexual woman, I've had experiences of not feeling queer enough in queer spaces, and this, I know that, the validation and the belonging does not come from a corporation ever, but it was like, oh, everybody who's always made me feel this way is going to walk into Target and see my stuff on the my face on the Pride stuff. That's going to feel so cool. And it felt like I had been recloseted by them, by having my name taken off of it. And, it's a good story to tell. I wish that there was more, out of it. But yeah, it was just really upsetting. I think everybody that I worked with on the Target team no longer works there, because they were all really disgusted by it. And there's so many people, like not just the artists, but so many people at the agency that connected Target and me, at Target, at every part of the way, that had been working for months and months and just had it all taken away. It was really surreal. So, yeah.
If Target came back and said,
Fuck no. Absolutely not.
yeah.
No.
Has it changed your attitude in general collaborating with any kind of entities like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really worth my time now. I have learned, what the royalty rates that are expected are, and now it's really put the fire under my own butt to do collaborations with, like, my queer peers, where I can offer them 25% royalties on the stuff that we make together. This hair claw it says Queer Joy on it. It's a little cake, and it was designed by a queer painter who does fine art, but she doesn't, that is a little bit harder to make money on than selling stickers, which is like my bread and butter. And so I said, oh, let's work together. I have the fulfillment, I have the warehouse, I can get this stuff sold out, and we can get you some extra money off of your designs without you having to do all the heavy lifting. And so that has been kind of where I've shifted my focus to now, of doing what Target failed to do for me, doing it for real with other artists and businesses.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I want to shift back to the whole panel. So the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club called on SF Pride recently to ban companies that dropped their DEI initiatives from the parade. SF Pride cut ties with Meta, as you mentioned, and some others, it sounds like. But the line isn't always so clear. I'm curious, for each of your respective organizations, where is the line on when a corporation does X, Y, or Z, no longer will I participate or let them participate in my organization?
We have certain types of corporations that no oil companies, no defense companies, no tobacco companies, no Adolf Coors companies. That's written into our bylaws. It's a case-by-case thing. Our board, I was on the board for 4.5 years before I became executive director. And I remember it was about Google and YouTube. They owned YouTube. And there was a person on YouTube who was being terrible right-wing person, persecuting a non-binary reporter. I wish I could remember the names, but we came under immense pressure from the community over it. And I remember trying to sort through it. I was the treasurer at the time, so that I was worried about funding the event. Sometimes we're moved by the community, and sometimes we say, no. I think, first of all, we're not, we're a 4-person staff right now with a couple of contractors, $4 million. I can't tell you that Corporation A, everything they do is good. I don't have the staff. So it's really, if the community comes to us and really puts the pressure on us, sometimes we will respond. But in my estimation, all money is bad. All corporations are bad in some way. They're built to extract labor. It's very difficult for San Francisco Pride to be the focal point. Like Amazon, for example, I come under a lot of pressure about Amazon, and I always want to say, how many people got a package from Amazon this week? If you're one of the people telling me to cut ties with Amazon and you yourself are not doing that, and some people are, and my hat's off to them, I'm not that disciplined, and I admit I get some stuff from Amazon. But if you're one of the people that is paying money to Amazon, and then you're sitting in front of me telling me not to take money from Amazon and give it to queer people, I'm going to respect you saying that, but I'm going to make a different decision.
I canceled my Amazon Prime, but I use my boyfriend's, so I'm part of the problem.
You're almost there. You're almost there.
Yeah, it's true. My housemate still has Amazon Prime. I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of truism about there's no ethical consumption under capitalism is real, right? And it's that, and that's where the money is as well. And so I know that, I'm not here representing the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, certainly, but the SFAF has developed a whole policy around donations and sort of who we take money from and who we don't. And I think that has become increasingly important to have a really thoughtful and nuanced policy around who do you take money from, who don't you take money from, what are the lines that we won't cross because we believe that they are actively harming the community, and we don't want to be pinkwashing, right? We don't want to be giving them cover as somehow helping the community when we actually know how much they are harming the community. But again, those things who is part of that community, right? There are, corporations that are profiting off of, the sort of internment camps that we're running for people with unsatisfactory immigration status, right? These ICE facilities, and there are corporations that are making money off of that. Corporations that are making money off of sort of police surveillance, and once you start going down those roads, where do you draw the line? And where I draw the line with my personal money may be different from where my employer draws the line with the money that they need to raise to continue providing services to the community. So, I think it's challenging. It's difficult to know where to do that. And it's a lot easier for me to say, I am going to not do this with my personal money. And honestly, it's the same thing with the government right now, right? And government money, right? It is increasingly coming with strings attached, really harmful, damaging strings attached. The San Francisco AIDS Foundation, along with the GLBT Historical Society last year, and a number of other organizations sued the Trump administration. I'm really proud to be affiliated with two of the organizations that are part of that, suing the Trump administration over the executive orders on gender ideology and DEI. And those are part of the same, executive orders that led corporations to back away from DEI efforts and back away from supporting our communities. It's all sort of part of the same thing. And, we're not willing to take federal grants that say you can't serve trans people, right? Because that's a core part of what we do as a nonprofit. So I think it is all gotten far more complicated in the last under this Trump administration, certainly, and it's and part of the point of this panel, right? The folks who are our friends aren't our friends, right?
I would say this probably applies less to me since I'm a consumer-based business, but there have been, other companies that I've decided to cut ties with over things like stealing from fellow artists or using AI. And I think I've taken like a two-prong approach of like making it explicitly clear to them why I will not be taking their money. And also having kind of a reputation for like, if you cross us, I'm going to make a video about it, and it's gonna go out to my followers and stuff. Like, I will not hold back. I fear no NDA, much to the chagrin of my lawyer. But, kind of. And I've also, the other prong is like, making my stances very outspoken. Like, my business is very proudly socialist, pro-Palestine, and that kind of it does its own sorting for me because people who are afraid of that aren't coming to me to try to work together. So it works out.
One aspect of what taking money from corporations can do, and sometimes has been accused of happening, is that it might force an organization's behavior to change a little bit. In the case of Pride, maybe focusing more on palatable depictions of queer people, centering on more white cis male narratives and whatnot. Do we think that the taking money from the corporations has changed any of the messaging for your respective organizations, or perhaps in Elizabeth's case, do you feel free to do things differently because you're not catering to corporate interests?
I feel an obligation to go like further in the opposite direction, especially because now I've gone through the situation of having a corporation try to utilize like my queer joy, my queer identity to have designs that make them look like an ally when they have no interest in being a true ally. I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, because you're not taking corporate money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, going in the opposite direction. Sorry. It's just like it's made me stick my heels in more and be like, I'm not going to let them utilize our identity to pinkwash and to look cool and stuff. So yeah, going in the opposite direction is like, it's really motivated me to do that.
Yeah, I love this question. San Francisco Pride is not the white gay male organization it was. It just isn't. The board is over half trans, over half people of color. There's one white gay male on the staff. We have a relationship with Folsom Street that I don't think SF Pride ever had. We share a space together. There's a street fair coalition with them and the Castro Street Fair. Angel and the folks at Folsom, we have an adult area inside SF Pride. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but there is a pee pool inside SF Pride. I don't give a damn what corporation gives us money. It has nothing to do with what we say. We released a statement about Palestine well before most orgs in this city. I talked to other nonprofit executive directors. Most of them wanted nothing to do with that yet. We called for a ceasefire. We called it what it is. We called it a genocide in our statement. I did in that whole thing, and God, to be at Pride and to get death threats on both sides of the Palestinian issue is insane. I think the conservative Jew death threats were really, really better than the others. They were really distinct about what they wanted to do to us. I had one of our leading sponsors called me in the middle of that, and they said, Suzanne, before you make any more statements, could you run it by us before you say it? And I said, absolutely not. And I can tell you, it was north of $125,000, and I said, that will never happen at SF Pride. And I'm so proud of that. And I think we get a bad rap there because that's not who the fuck we are. And we really, 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 really take to heart what we're supposed to mean.
These are smart enough to know where their market is, and as the demographics of HIV have changed, they have changed what their marketing looks like. So for whatever reason, I get a bunch of, I watch RuPaul's Drag Race, I get a bunch of like ads for Gilead, medications for PrEP, et cetera. And they have really, they are very intentionally showing a range of demographics in those ads because that is where HIV is going, right? That is where HIV is. So there are cis gay guys in the ads, but that is not the only people that are in the ads. And I think, so they're sort of like following their market into these other demographics, and so they're making the representations and what they are looking for and what they are funding as well, following that. So it's not, it's not out of some sort of like, it's not a DEI initiative when Gilead shows a trans woman in their ad for PrEP, right? It's a marketing decision.
Interesting. Elizabeth, I had another question for you that I thought about when with the Peach Fuzz, because it's small and independent. Were there trade-offs that you have thought about? Laura talked about how one of the trade-offs of taking corporate money is it allows you to scale and reach more people, do more good by reaching more people and being able to market and whatnot. Have you thought about whether or not your model limits your impact, or has that not been as much of a focus?
I've been extremely fortunate that at the time when even Target was approaching me, we were already doing $500,000 in sales a year. And then the following year, we did $1 million in sales and have kept that up every year, which is extremely unusual for an independent artist business. So I think that's really why I have dug my heels in, been outspoken about like, you're not gonna fucking treat me that way, and I'm gonna make sure everybody knows that they can't be treated that way either. Because there was a time where I was a, super small, we were barely doing $10,000 in sales a year, where I would have been like, yes, absolutely, you can do whatever you want to me, and I'll take, like, absolutely, I just want to be included. And I don't have to do that now, so it gives me a lot more room to demand better and to advocate that other people demand more for themselves. And it's why I can say, no, I don't need your business, Target. Thank you very much. I'm going to go work with other small artists because we do have this like booming structure set up that I have that opportunity. And I think it's a tremendous privilege that I need to use for good. So
That's great. I wanted to kind of move us a little bit towards kind of a final question here, and then we can open it up to the room. I'm sure there's lots of other questions. And I wanted to kind of close out by thinking about the kind of journey that a lot of this corporate allyship has gone on. Events like Pride started with only 20 people going down Polk Street, and now $4 million to run. And now, as we're seeing some of this retreat from some sponsors, what is kind of your overall sentiment about the future right now? Is it going to get better without this money involved, or do we need to find a way to recover it or its version of support?
I've been in this realm a lot less time than everybody else, so maybe this is naive, but I don't believe that our liberation will come at the hands of corporations. It never has, and I don't see why it suddenly would. So I think that they can maybe continue to retreat, and there's the natural ebbs and flows of political discourse and stuff, but like, we're not going anywhere. Queer people aren't going anywhere. Trans people aren't going anywhere. And while it's nice to have their money, I don't see it being the missing piece that we've ever needed to incite change. So I have little morsels of hope that I hold on to, and knowing everything that people have achieved pre-corporate sponsorship has really like fueled that fire to keep going.
Yeah, queer liberation includes liberation from capitalism, right? Like true queer liberation happens in the absence of capitalism. And at the same time, that is where we live now. In a capitalist system, I won't be able to give you the Ursula Le Guin quote off the top of my head, but you can look it up about how, we all think capitalism is inevitable now, but at one point the rule of kings, right? Like the monarchy was also seen as inevitable and ordained by God. And I have completely mangled it. And my apologies to the ghost of Ursula Le Guin. And please look it up. And I will also say, every single HIV organization in this city, the roots of every organization is in a group of friends coming together and saying, we need to do something. That is how every single organization, around the world essentially started, was a group of friends saying, we need to take care of each other. We need to take care of our community. No one else is going to do it. That's how we all stepped up. That is how all of the DNA, the roots of our HIV organizations in this city, are a group of friends, a community coming together, saying the government is not going to come save us, corporations are not going to come save us, we have to do it ourselves. It is because of the work that we all did that we now have money coming from corporations, that we now have government funding, that we now have a lot of public health care options for people with HIV. We have publicly funded PrEP and HIV prevention, but we were here first and we will be here afterwards. And it's the same thing. Like, we can do this. We know how to do this. It's part of what we have always done. I would rather have enough resources and enough money and sort of abundance to take care of everyone, but if that, it is not worth the harms to our community that come from some of these corporations and some of these government policies to take their money.
Great question. I'm planning on cashing as many of their checks and giving them to queer people on the Pride weekend as I can. San Francisco Pride gave away $140,000 in grants to nonprofits in this city, queer nonprofits, small queer nonprofits that, not like ours, but, people that $10,000 means everything. And we're going to give away $200,000 this year. I would love to live in a city where the city, like West Hollywood, for example, said that Pride means so much to us, we would like to fund it as a city because it means so much to us. I've been arguing that for 5 years, and if I have this job, I'll be arguing it for 5 more. So far, they are unwilling. So I think we're going to protect the 1 million people up and down Market Street, the 300,000 people in the Civic Center. I'm going to make sure that they're safe, that they are here for the weekend and they get home. And right now, in our model, to keep it free, I have to cash their checks. But I think we need to always say, just because we cash your check doesn't mean we're co-signing to all your bullshit. We're not. And finally, also I will say, almost all those people, you talked about Gilead a lot. I can tell you I had lunch with Jane Stafford a couple of weeks ago, and that woman, that relationship we have with her trying to find ways to make sure that we all have pride, that is genuine. That is not from their marketing company. Gilead increased their sponsorship. They are sponsoring the broadcast, which is a net of $50,000 more to Pride, and they are going to match up to $50,000 at the June 10th Castro event where we're going to have a fundraiser. And I just am not going to walk away from people like Jane Stafford and that relationship and that investment in Pride. But I'm real willing, if you want to come to a board meeting and tell me where we're going wrong, we'll listen to you, we'll engage with you, and we'll think about changing. But I don't see a different model yet.
Thank you so much, all of you, for your time and participating in this panel. A lot of great insight. Thank you. So we'll open this up now to the room to ask questions. Lee's got a microphone that they can bring by.
Hi, thank you all so much. This has been fascinating and informative. I think my question is mostly for Suzanne and Laura. You both talked about how there are some corporations your organizations will take money from and some that you won't. Can you, without naming names, or with naming names if you want to, talk about a difficult decision that you had to make, a decision where you were on the fence, and the question of, are we going to take their money or are they not, was not clear cut?
For me, Starbucks, difficult because we've had labor come and ask us not to accept Starbucks money, and I grew up, my stepfather and father were both, I grew up in a union household. We took their money last year. At the time, we were in no position to make that call, and it's kind of great, really. But we didn't have a relationship with them like the people I just talked about, and they stepped away this year, and I was really pleased. And they offered us some free pastries and coffee. Abby, are we going to take that? I don't. Oh, I love that. We're going to take Phil's, okay?
Yeah, I don't have any particular ones that I can name or not name. And I think, I'm not a decision maker around like which contributions we take at my employer. But making sure that it is something where, we don't feel like we're being used by a corporation that is actively harming our community is kind of where that line is, part of where that line is drawn. Yeah. But a good question.
So I did want to ask about Pride. So I did grow up in West Hollywood. Well, I grew up in LA, and my first Prides were West Hollywood. And I will say it made a huge difference because it felt like the community just showing up for the community. And it took away kind of like the corporate aspect. And moving to San Francisco, it felt very different. And it was interesting seeing Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo and Kaiser and a number of others celebrating us. And that's nice, but I liked us celebrating us. So I guess when I'm looking at Pride here, I know it's difficult, like the money and the expense. Why avoid charging entrance fee? If that's why not have us pay if it gets corporates out of there? If we kind of all agree it's not, we don't like it, so.
I love you. I love you. My board, we asked, there's a board member sitting here, Jupiter's a board member at SF Pride. She's the treasurer, so she's really interested in my answer. You would not want to be the executive director of San Francisco Pride and announce that you are charging now, that we are changing the fabric of what makes us us. It gets brought up a lot. It would switch some things though. There are some city charges that we get reductions on. The Bill Graham, there's so many days of the year that the city gets the use of the Bill Graham. Now, I got a bill for like $50,000 from them, but much reduced from what it would be if we had the Bill Graham for 3 days, the event. So if we charge, then some of those charges will go back up. I don't have that much political clout to make an announcement that we are charging at Pride, but yeah, I wish I yeah.
Is there a way to market it though? Is there a way to say, hey, we're taking all of this away? You don't have to watch Kaiser and Bank of America and all these people anymore. But to do that, we need your support.
$2 million worth. $2 million worth. And most of the sponsors, just so you know, the sponsors, few of the sponsors have some activations at the Civic Center, but it's not really their jam. Their jam is coming down that parade and getting that shot on social media or on ABC7 of their contingent going down the parade. So it's really not the same. Like you could take all the people out of the Civic Center as far as corporations, but you'd still be lost with, that's really where the huge bill is and how are you going to pay for the talent and everything. West Hollywood does do that. They do charge. JJLA is a very professional. They have great stages. I mean, it is really cool, but the city pays for it.
What governance structure does SF Pride have to avoid like your successor coming in having a really oddball view like vegan, any company that sells meat or does leather is out, no Folsom, it's leather. Like, how do you future-proof so you don't get some crazy misalignment in the board that's going to really cut funding for things that today we don't think are, no-nos?
Pride is not insulated from, Pride is kind of the focal point where you will have people coming. And I mean, I think to make sure trans people were seen, Pride felt that before other organizations did. We are a member organization. Everybody here, if you're not a member of Pride, it can cost you as little as $15 a year. sfpride.org, you should be a member. When you're a member, you get to vote for the board. Our board of directors is member elected. When I decided to be on the board, I ran for the board. So the impetus to go back to the granting, like the $140,000 grant program, that came from Jack Beck from Turnout, who decided to run for the board because I was giving some of that money to professional concessionaires. It was easier. But queer people were missing out on that money. And Jack ran for the board with that. That was his platform, and he made the board, and then he convinced our board, and I enacted what the board, and I agreed with it, although it made my life a little more difficult. But, so we're not insulated, to tell you the truth. You shouldn't take it for granted. I think we all saw Long Beach. You saw that, right? An hour before, Long Beach Pride canceled. And I don't want to tell you how many times we've been close. It's not going to happen now, but it is really fragile. And if people don't get involved, like Wynn gave 7 years of his life to the board of directors. I gave 8. I gave 4.5 years of my life to the board of directors. I'm sure you're not getting paid here for your board of director service. Like, get involved, and then you can make sure that I don't think it would happen at Pride. I think we'll go the other way, to make sure you have to do leather, but.
And just, to emphasize, like, these are all community organizations. And, if you want to get involved in the Dyke March, talk to Rocket, they're all, and it can be really messy, to be sure. But these are community institutions, and they're when historically we have had decisions made by leadership of community institutions that weren't popular with the community. They heard about it, right? Like, they heard about it, and it forced changes. There's a reason why you can vote for for members of the Pride Board of Directors, right? And that all goes back to sort of history of how these decisions have been made, and when the community has said, no, this actually belongs to us, and we want to have a role in this. And so, which is if you have opinions, if you have skills, if you have resources, if this is something that's important to you, it's an opportunity to step up and be a part of boards of directors, be a part of organizing groups. Like, these organizations really do belong to us.
Hi, thank you all for speaking. This is even on. Can you hear me? I don't think it's working. So I personally have an agenda with getting the city to pay for these things. I mean, it's unconscionable to me that they market Pride as a tourist destination, and yet they don't pay for it. They expect not in the case of Pride, SF Pride, but the Dyke March and the Trans March to pay exorbitant fees for permits and whatever else, the services, the vendors that they have to employ in order to get the job done of keeping a safe, well-managed machine to produce the events. I mean, what can we do to get the city to pay for what they should be paying for?
Start with your supervisor. But I will tell you, like, Supervisor Mandelman has really gone to bat. Like, San Francisco Pride has received more money from the city in the last 5 years than we had. It's just that as you know, Rocket, that the astronomical cost of these events in this city, the city is not keeping pace. But it has to start with our supervisors. I can tell you that I have beat down Mayor Lurie's door. I like Mayor Lurie. He is never going to fund our events. He is just not. The people he answers to aren't that enamored with all our events, especially yours and the Trans March. I'm doing everything I can. I wish I had the magic answer. We have formed the Street Fair Coalition, which, Rocket, we should be talking, and the Trans March will never come to the Street Fair Coalition. I think our purpose with Street Fair Coalition, us, Castro, Folsom, is I thought we could have some more lobbying power, right? Like, my God, look how much money I'm not sure the people that are running this city right now really care to bring people to San Francisco to go to Pride or to go to the Dyke March. They might they might be profiting a little bit economically, but that's not the image of San Francisco that they, which makes me cry. That's not the San Francisco they're telling people to come to. They want you to come to Union Square and buy a really nice, expensive watch, but they don't want freaks to come be with other freaks, I don't think.
Yeah, just to amplify and echo that. I mean, one piece of it is, vote for, we need more queer people who come from community in elected office in this city. That is, Harvey Milk, elect Jose Julio Saria for supervisor, right? Like, that's our history right here. We need to elect queer people. I think we have a mayor who, in his campaign, like, he didn't have to come to queer community institutions to ask for our vote in the same way that previous candidates for mayor have. He doesn't have the same connections to community. He doesn't have the same investment. He doesn't answer to queer community in the way that previous mayors did, and that shows in his funding priorities. And we are currently facing substantial budget cuts from the city right now in HIV prevention, in LGBTQ health, in immigrant health, in harm reduction. We are facing cuts in all of the same things that the Trump administration is trying to cut, right? The Trump administration is cutting and criminalizing gender-affirming care. What is our current mayor's health department proposing? Cuts to Lion Martin, cuts to our community, San Francisco Community Health Center, like cuts to our community services. And, like, if he's proposing cuts with one hand, he's not going to be increasing funding to our community organizations with the other. And I think, it comes back to building political power and making ourselves heard and making it clear that we are a part of this community, and we live in an extremely wealthy city, right? Like, this is such a wealthy city, and it is getting wealthier by the minute, and yet so little of that wealth translates into, queer organizations or queer events, right? Which is not because some of the leaders of these, companies aren't gay themselves, like Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and all these people, right? And but the money doesn't, that is not, they don't engage with community in any way that results in more resources for us. So I think it's, get involved with your local political group, get involved in your neighborhood Democratic club. I've got a call to action that I'll do if you want to get involved in our budget fights. It's, we have to make ourselves heard because, we, like so many people, we are such a driver of economic development in this city, and the mayor wants to talk about all these people coming for downtown, events, right? But a lot of them are queer events, like the Downtown First Thursday is run by a queer woman, and yet there's no recognition of the extent to which all of this nightlife and entertainment that they're trying to promote is actually, coming out of the queer community.
Do we have anyone else who has any questions or anything they'd like to add? All right.
Yes, on D, says Lito. Yes, so I will, so if it's okay, I will give a call to action. So I work for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. We are part of the People's Budget Coalition. We house the HIV advocacy network, and we are facing millions of dollars in cuts to HIV prevention in San Francisco, of all places. We're facing cuts to our harm reduction and substance use disorder treatment programs in this city. We are facing cuts to LGBTQ health, including our health clinics, at a time when we know these services are being cut at the federal level. And so our call to action is to get involved. We have a very easy, you can take out your cell phone, and I will give you a phone number, and if you text Fight Cuts to this number, you get an opportunity to send an email to our elected officials, to Mayor Lurie, to the members of the Board of Supervisors, to be a part of the community pushback. So if you want to dig out your phones, the phone number is 1-888-272-2848. And if you text the words Fight Cuts to that number, you'll get an opportunity to send an email. You can change the email, you can figure out what you want to do, but you can also get updates from us moving forward. So again, it's 888-272-2848, and text Fight Cuts to that number, and you'll have an opportunity to be a part of the movement to help save our services.
Okay, I have a call to action for everybody. Great questions today, but I can tell you, you go to sfpride.org. On June 10th, Peaches Christ will be putting on We Built This City, a queer entertainment at the Castro Theater. There will be a VIP party upstairs that you can buy tickets for at sfpride.org. Tuesday night of Pride Week, Pride at Glide. On Saturday morning, Rocket and I will be at 10 a.m. I think we'll be at the Embarcadero and Market. We will have the Trans Ally March with the Indivisible SF people, the People's March, the Dyke March, and the Dykes on Bikes will lead it. If you were here because you want Pride to be more political, that's what we're trying to do. And then on Sunday, obviously, the parade, but Sunday afternoon, we'll have our fabulous party in the Asian Art Museum. So you can go on sfpride.org and get tickets to all those events. And people buying tickets to those events surely helps us eliminate some corporate funding.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers and our moderator tonight for this wonderful conversation. I just want to reiterate to everyone, if you don't mind filling out that survey, you can do it here, you can do it when you get home. We would love to hear your feedback. I also wanted to share, in addition to the Peach Fuzz, if you are interested in supporting another independent queer artist who was kicked out of one of the Pride campaigns. I personally have known somebody for many years. They do a project called Girl Spells, so it's GRRRL Spells. If you like any sort of like occult, spooky, gothy, queer stuff, that's up your alley. Girl Spells is fantastic. So they were another group that got the boot from Target. So support queer artists, support our queer fellow nonprofits, and support your community out there. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.